Thank you, General Quintus, to General Nicholson, Ambassador Bass, to all the members of the United States Armed Forces, our allies and partners. It is my great honor to join you here at Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan with the men and women of resolute support. Now, I know it must be hard to be so far from home, away from your families and friends, especially this time of year. So in this season, I just want you all to know that you're on the hearts of the American people. In gatherings large and small all across this country, in the communities from which you come, I know there'll be a place saved at the dinner table for every one of you. And I also want you to know that millions of Americans will breathe a prayer of thanks for your service and for your safety as you stand for our freedom in this distant land. But whether you wear the uniform or you're here as a civilian, each one of you have stood up and stepped forward to defend our nation, our people, and our very way of life. And your leadership and your service speak louder than any words I could say here tonight. You're patriots. You are heroes. You did not, as that old book says, love your lives so much as to shrink from this calling to serve and defend our nation. And while you come from the rest of us, you are the best of us. Every day you prove a truth of history anew. The armed forces of the United States are the world's greatest force for good, and you are a part of those armed forces here in Afghanistan. And during this special season, this very base, Bagram Airfield, has been at the heart of our campaign from the very beginning. It's a bastion of strength and a beacon of freedom in this corner of the world. And as President Trump has said, it's thanks to you and those who stood on this ground before you that, in his words, the horrors on the scale of September 11th have not been repeated on our shores. Let me assure you, you inspire the world with your courage and your unconquerable spirit. You've crushed the enemy in the field and continue to do so. You've driven them into hiding and struck fear into their hearts. You've given the Afghan people the hope of freedom, the freedom to determine their own destiny and chart their own future. But as we all know well, these great achievements have come at a great cost. We're making real progress in this fight for freedom in Afghanistan. We've dramatically increased American airstrikes, and together with our Afghan partners, we've put the Taliban on the defensive. We've prevented them from launching a major campaign against a provincial capital for the first time in 3 years. We've targeted the Taliban's funding as never before through renewed attacks on its drug trafficking networks. And thanks to the leadership of your Commander-in-Chief and the courage of all of you, in another field of battle, ISIS is on the run. Their capital has fallen. Their so-called caliphate has crumbled from Iraq to Afghanistan and everywhere in between. Thanks to our new strategy, our allies have stepped up as never before. This very gathering is proof. Resolute support has already brought together the United States with 38 other countries from NATO across the wider world. They're sending their best and their bravest to this coalition. Today, you stand shoulder to shoulder with them in defense of freedom. The Afghan people are a proud and noble people who have suffered long. In the 1980s, during their long war with the former Soviet Union. In the 1990s, under the brutal rule of the Taliban. And in recent years, from the terrorists and militant who continue to threaten their homes and their families, and who have claimed the lives of more than 35,000 brave Afghan soldiers, security forces, along with countless civilians. But through all the strife, through all their struggle, the Afghan people, those you serve alongside in their armed forces today, have never lost their love of freedom, never lost their courage or their yearning to live in a land free of terror and war. And let the people of Afghanistan know the United States of America stands with them. Where do you want me to stand? Had the privilege of developing a relationship with President Ghani and Dr. Abdullah, but it was very important to us to get down to the palace.